Well, welcome to Modeling Time with me, Brian Banna. Well, I finally got some parts in, so I can continue on with this Missouri Pacific GP35 builds, the 6 of them that I'm working on at the same time. What I got in were the draft gearboxes. So now that those are in, I can locate where the hole needs to be on the frame so that I can drill and tap that in and move on. Because once I get that done, I can get the fuel tank glued on, because there's no reason to ever have to take the fuel tank off of these GP35s. There's nothing to get at. So I will basically do that. And because, you know, the fuel tank doesn't cover up the bottom of the frame, so you get the screws are open, so there's no need to take the fuel tank off to get to the screws for the motor. There's nothing that fits around it. There's nothing underneath it to get to, so I can do that. What I will do is, after I glue the fuel tank on, I will fill the little snap hole gaps in the ends where the tank snaps together, and then I'll face that off with the mill. But we'll get to that at another time. Right now, I just want to get the camera set up over here and show you what I've gotten done on the frame and what I'm going to do. Okay, so these are the draft gearboxes I had made for the Kato GP35s. They actually came all together. I think there's 12 pair in here. And so I got enough to do the models that I want to do for the Missouri Pacific units, and enough to do for other things that I have planned. So I've got 2 cut out. Now, I don't just take a knife and just cut them out, like try to snap them off. This plastic, although it's fairly strong, it's very brittle, and you have a good chance, or I'll have a good chance of cracking the lids, or cracking off some of the edges. So what I use is one of these small photo etched saws, and it just goes through very, very quickly. The sprue gates, or where everything's tied together, is fairly thin, so it doesn't take much for one of these saws to go through. Now, when the parts are off, you'll have this. Let me zoom in just a tiny bit here. You'll have these little tabs off of the ends. Now, I don't come in with like a sprue nipper and cut those off. Instead, what I do is I just take a sharp knife and I come in and I just slice it. You might be able to hear it break or cracking, but it's not, you know, it's not breaking off anything. You know, it's like if I were to take a nippers and squeeze it, it would crack it, and it might crack off, like I said, an edge or something like that. So I just take a sharp hobby knife, and I just go in and cut those off. Especially here, if I were to use a sprue nipper to cut that one off, it would definitely crack the front end of this piece off. So what I do is I just slice it off and then scrape, and it's done. Now, I designed these boxes so that the lid has little pins in it, and those pins fit in the hole in the body like that. Now, the part that the coupler fits around, once you put the lid on, is flush with the top of the lid, so that when you put the screw in, you're not putting any pressure on the lid to bind the coupler. The top of the portion that the coupler goes around, this will go up against the frame, so there'll be no pressure on the lid. So here's a coupler in the box. Now, the reason I designed these is because I wanted to move the coupler back inside the box more, so that you wouldn't have so much shank sitting out like you do on, oh, here we go. Let me pull this coupler out of here. I've got a Kato box right here. So if I put the coupler in the Kato box, see how much shank sticks out? So that's sticking out in front of your pilot plate. So if I put that in here, that's what it looks like sticking out there. And that's a short shank coupler. So now, if I put it in my newly designed draft gearbox, now you'll notice also on this design draft gear, on my design, I've got the front opening a little bit narrower. This is about 10 degrees right here. So it limits the swivel, so you're not going like way to one side like that, or way to the other side like that. You don't need that. We're not, even on an 18-inch curve, you don't need that. So with mine, what I'll do, now I have to trim these little whiskers down a little bit, because when I put them in, I gotta get them inside the box. There we go. Now when I put the lid on, so the front of the box is designed exactly the same as a Kato box, and the height and the width. So there we have, now the whiskers aren't working because they're squeezed in so far, and I don't really care if they work or not, because you can see how little of a swivel you have. But what's nice about this is when you're shoving cars, your coupler's not pushing all the way over to as far as it can go. It's only pushing over to the edge a little bit, so you're not getting a lot of force pushing out. It's staying more concentrated toward the middle. So that's my coupler pocket, and now you'll see that the shank doesn't stick out as far. And when I put this in here, push it up against there, there's what it looks like, and that's what it should look like. I mean, if we had a proper buffer plate on there and everything, it would look really nice. But everything about the box is the same as a Kato box, except for how far the coupler sticks into it. So, and this actually puts the coupler, I mean, if this was like a Sargent coupler, because I made these a long time ago for Sargent couplers also. If this was a Sargent coupler, it would put the pulling face of the coupler a scale 25 inches off the face of the pilot plate, and that is 0.29 or 0.3, but that's not what this is. But anyway, I like the look of that better, and it works. It's very functional and works great. Now, what I've done to the frame, so let's move on to the frame. Now, if anybody wants me to put these up for sale on my Shapeways site, just put in the comments that you'd like to, and what I'll do is I'll put in enough for 2 locomotives. I don't think you want enough for, what is this? How many are there? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yeah, there's 12. So there's enough for 12 locomotives. I don't think you want that much, and you want to pay that much for them. So I'll put them in as enough for 2 if you want them. I don't know what it'll cost. I have to, re-upload a new drawing with just the 4 pieces on there. So anyway, so that's what those are. I'm really happy with the way they work, and they'll do just fine. The lid stays on nicely and stuff. So what I've done with the frame so far, I have plugged the holes, and I have cut the screw heads off so everything's flush, and now I can relocate the draft gearbox onto here. I've also cut in the saddle so that, let me see if I got one available. Here we go. So that a power pack. Now what I do with my power packs is I desolder the board and then solder it in line with the power pack. And I will make a mark. It's kind of rubbed off, but I put a mark on this minus sign, and I also color the side of this board black so that I know that I get them back in the same orientation. So now when I get the motor and everything in, I can glue this power pack right into here, into the saddle with some silicone sealer, and it'll tuck in real nicely. The board will be right here, and everything will look, everything will tuck in real nicely, and the wires will just come over to the soundboard. So I've got that cut into all of them, and what I did is I just measured the diameter of the power pack, and from the top of the frame down to the bottom of the cut is half the diameter. So this sits halfway down the diameter into the frame. So that's been taken care of. So the next thing I have to do, like I said, is put the draft gearboxes in. Now to do that, you would, let me put this back together so I can just, oh, and by the way, this draft gearbox fits up beautifully with the Kato, puts a coupler perfectly with the Kato height gauge. I'd have to reset up the camera to show all that, and I don't think you're interested in seeing it. But you know what, maybe I will when I'm done here. I don't want to hide anything from you. I want to show you everything. So now, to locate the where I need to drill and tap into this frame, it's not as easy as just putting the sill on, putting this in here, turning it over and marking it. And the reason for that is this sill moves on the frame, and it moves enough that if you mark it in one spot and then accidentally move the frame to another spot, or the sill unit to another spot, your holes are going to be off. So best thing to do is just lock it down with the shell. Now you'll see the frame doesn't, or the sill doesn't move. Now what I can do, this hole in here is a clearance hole for a 0.80 screw, which just so happens to be, I made it 60 thousandths diameter. This is a 58 thousandths drill bit, and it fits perfectly through the hole. There's no play in it or anything. Now I don't need to drill a hole with this drill bit, but what I do need to do is make a center mark. After I've grit blasted these frames, they start tarnishing after a while, which is good because it helps me locate this bear. So what I do is I find the top of the coupler, which is the lid. The lid goes up, so I put that in. I'm going to put my thumb at the back to hold this in place, and I'm going to take a straight edge and I'm going to push the draft gearbox in till it's even with the buffer plate on the Kato model, and I'm going to press down on it really hard with my thumb to lock it in place so there's no movement, and then I'm just going to go right in there with the drill bit, just let it fall down in there, and just do a couple of quarter spins on it, pull it out, and I've got a dot right there. You can see a little bit of a shiny dot right there. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing on the back and on the back and on all of the other frames, and then I'm going to drill them and tap them for a 0.80 screw. One of the important things I forgot to mention is after you get your little mark on your frame, you need to at least get a hole, well, not a hole, but a little pinprick, let's call it, to get your drill bit started. So what I'll do is I'll take this shell is really tight on this frame. I'll do this one after I show you this. So we got to pull this. There we go. So now that you got it marked, Then I take a little, this is an old like eyeglass screwdriver that I've sharpened into a point. I'll find my mark, and there's just enough of a dimple that the point of the screwdriver will fall in, and then I'll just press and rotate. And now I have the center of where the drill needs to go through. So like I said, I'll go ahead and get that done on this end and the other 5 frames. Now, after I've done the pinprick with the sharpened screwdriver, I'll do a visual check to make sure that that pinprick is even with the quadrant of this filled old hole where I filled it with the brass screw. And both of these are exactly right on the quadrant, or even with so if I was to draw a line through the center of this cut-off screw, it would be right in on the center of where I did a pinprick. So what I'll do next is I'll take a drill bit that is the correct size for a 080 tap, which is .045, and I bought a whole bunch of new ones, so I have some fresh ones, and I will now start the hole. Now I'm not going to drill it by hand, I'm going to drill it with the drill press, but I have a reference for the drill to sink down into. So that when I bring the drill bit down, the way that I do the centering, because I don't have any centering tools like gauges and stuff to tell me that I'm on center, is I'll bring the drill bit down in my drill press, and if I see any deflection one way or the other, I'll make the correction so that finally when I come down, the drill bit comes down and doesn't deflect in any direction. It comes straight down. So that's why I do this, to give it a reference on where to drill. And that has worked really, really well for me for a long time. And I will use oil when drilling. Okay, now I'll use the new bit and see how well that cuts. I think I bought 10 of these bits. Oh yeah, that cuts good. Alright, that gives me a good reference there. That gives me a good reference there. Okay, I'm going to do this to the other 5 frames, then we'll move the camera over to the drill press and we'll get these holes drilled. Okay, so I've got all of the dimples hand drilled, and now I'm going to use the drill press and put a hole through it. So you're not going to see a whole lot in this video other than this collet going up and down a bit. I'm going to, I don't know if you're going to be able to see the drill bit deflecting and me finding the center, but we'll see how it goes. So right now I don't turn it on. So I'm a little off there. Okay, so it's deflecting this way, so I need to go in. It's deflecting that way, so I need to come out. everything's good. So I'm going to dry cut this just a little bit first. And now I'll get some oil. And I don't use your, machinist cutting oil or anything. This is Mobile One oil, an old can I had, or an old bottle I had a while ago, so I don't want to use that one. Oop. Let me go get a brush that's oily. I don't want to oil up all my toothbrushes. Alright, so let's put some oil in there. And that's it. So I'll go ahead and get all these frames done, and then we'll do, I'll tap one hole on camera. Alright, so I've got the holes all drilled in the frame. Let me move the camera over just a little bit. Here we go. Zoom in. So you can see I've got the holes drilled. Now it's time to use a 080 tap. Now this material is soft enough that you don't really need a T-type tap handle. I just use a large pin vise. And let me get my, says 080 on there, and this one is the same thing, 080 UNF. This is the one I usually use. So even though it's soft material, I still want to use a little bit of oil in there. When this is all done, I will wash all these with Dawn dishwashing liquid and clean them all up. So we'll just tap one hole on camera, and then I'll go the laborious task of tapping all those holes by hand. So we're just going to get it started, do a few turns. Back a quarter turn. So I make some turns and then back a quarter turn, and it's already through. So it's done being tapped. And that's it. That's all that needs to be done. And I'll clean the chips off the tap. And I'll go ahead and do this one. So I'll put a little bit of oil in there. And we're all the way through. And that's it. So I'll go ahead and get these next 5 frames done, and then I'll wash these frames, get them cleaned up, and we'll get the fuel tanks on. Alright, so I've got all the frames tapped, so I got the holes tapped. One last thing I do is I take a chamfering tool, and I just by hand just spin it and clean off any metal that may have mushroomed out from the drilling and the tapping. And that's it. So now I can go wash these frames, and get them and test them. We'll test them, make sure everything works well, and I'll show you the coupler height gauge, and then we'll get the fuel tanks on. Alright, so I've got the frames all cleaned, scrubbed them down in hot water and some Dawn dishwashing liquid, so everything's clean, they're all dry. As I mentioned in the very first video, the introduction video, this build, or these 6 models, are not going to be super detailed. They're going to be pretty much almost 100% out of the box. There will be a little bit of changes to them as far as adding a few details to make them a little bit more specific. But other than that, they're going to stay, you know, what they are. So, with that said, and another thing, I lied to you all. I apologize for in the few videos back, or a few not episodes, but a few videos in this episode back, I had mentioned that the couplers, these boxes were designed for short shank couplers. They're not. This is a medium shank coupler. I have a really hard time telling the difference when they're just one by themselves, but when I brought out my short shanks, it was shorter and it didn't fit in the box. So these are medium shank couplers. And also I designed this box to this coupler, which is a medium shank coupler, and you can see that I have filed a little bit off the top here, which makes it swing inside the draft gearbox better, and I need to not do stuff like that. This one's just a little bit tighter. It still swings, but it's a little bit tighter, so when I put these together, I'll just file just a little tiny bit off the top to get them to swivel more. But I like the way that they swivel in here, so I'll just take just probably maybe a thousandth off. But let's do the coupler test. So this is the gauge, and we come up to it, and right now, if I look at that, the couplers are exactly at the same height to each other, so that all works out well. And let's turn it around, and these are my shop trucks, so they'll never be put on a model. Let me get this guy on here. There we go. And same for the back. So those are a perfect match. You can see how close they are to the pilot plate, and they look much, much better, I think, that way. So that takes care of the frames. Now I can start and put the fuel tanks on. So let me go get the fuel tanks out. I should have got them out already, but I didn't. And so let me go get those, and we'll talk about what's going to happen with that. Alright, so I've got all the fuel tanks out, as you can see. So I'll go ahead and move those aside. And we'll bring a frame over here. So what we're going to do is I'm going to put CA along these edges, and I'm going to put CA on this angled edge on the top of the fuel tanks. And then I'm going to stick it all together. And I'm going to push the fuel tank forward to close off the gap in the back, and it'll leave a slight gap in the front, but this will all get filled anyways. After that's done, I will put this into the vise, hold it upright, and then where the fuel tank clips together, is that out of focus? No. When the fuel tank clips together here, I will fill it with CA and let it set overnight. So it's going to take a while to do all these frames because I have to do one at a time to fill it. I don't want to fill it with putty because when I grit blast it, it can grit blast that putty out. So I'll use some medium CA to fill that. So let's go ahead and get this first one on. I should probably use some new CA. I've got, this has been a while, but it's not too treacly. Alright, we'll use that one. So the front of the frame is here. So we want to get these organized properly. So that one's going to go over there, and this one will go over here. So I'll just put all the glue on the frame. I won't put it on the inside here because it'll get on it when it's on there. So let's just go around here and just put a bead of CA And then let's put it on this bevel on the frame here. There we go. And make sure we got everything the right way. Let's put that on there. Like that. And stick that on there like that. Alright, so now everything's glued up good. Now I'm going to take just a little bit and put it in this gap here. A little bit in this gap here. Alright, so I'm going to let that set up for a little bit. Actually, what I'll do is I'll do all the frames like this first. That way it can set like this and all this glue can settle in. And when I turn the frame up, it won't want to run down. So I'll do all the frames like this first. And then tomorrow, or maybe later this evening, I'll turn them upright and start filling the ends. Alright. So that takes care of doing the frame. So I'm going to get the rest of the other 5 done, and that'll pretty much take care of this video. But before I close out this video, I want to show you a couple things. And I think it's kind of fun when you're working on a project and you're also working on other projects that you're not doing videos for, to kind of show you what's going on and stuff like that. So let me get this all done, and then I have a little sideshow for you. Alright, so I said I had a little sideshow going on here. Let me just wipe this off. I just got done grit blasting something, and it always drags a little grit in here. So I said I got a little sideshow to go over. Got a couple things to show you. First off is I designed a new draft gearbox for the Stewart F units. Now right now I've just designed it for the B unit. So this is what the original draft gearbox looks like. Let me zoom in on this a little bit. Okay. So this is what the original draft gearbox looks like. And I haven't tested this yet. I will do it very soon. And this is what my new draft gearbox, there's 2 of them here held together by this little tab. So what I've done is, from this point up, I duplicated the Stewart, or now Bowser, draft gearbox. So that's the clip that holds the draft gearbox into the frame. So that's from this point up. It's got the little clip over here. So this is the front, and it's the front there. Then what I did is I made the draft gearbox pad, and I duplicated the part from Details West, except I didn't put the step on it. I looked at a lot of pictures, and I couldn't find any pictures with that step on it. So that might be a Southern Pacific specific thing or something like that. So I didn't put that step on it, but that's what that is there. The little U-shaped piece, and then little 2 teeth that are actually to hold the coupler in place. Now, this is a coupler, should just slip right through there. Now I put it as far back as I could. Now this one is designed for a short shank coupler, but I don't have one up here. I forgot to get one out real quick. But anyway, so what this is on the back, that's the coupler pin. So you'll see there's a hole in the bottom. So this'll, you put your coupler in, you put your pin in, and there's enough meat in this coupler or draft gearbox that I'll just thread it with a 080 tap. I'll go up and I'll drill it. It's got a little tiny pilot hole in there, and then I'll drill it for a 080 and then tap it. So that's the new draft gearbox. The only thing I'm concerned about is if I got the coupler height correct to match the KD gauge. But I'll try this out in the next couple of days or so, and in the next video, whether it's the one for these GP35s or maybe the GP7 or something, I'll show it once I get it all tested out. So that's one thing. Let me put this aside. And the other thing, get this on the track, there we go. So let me put this aside. The other thing is my CPT&C GP28s. I got the cabs almost all done. Let me zoom out. Alright, so I've got the cabs almost all done. The only thing left to do on the cabs is to put the wind deflectors on the sides and put the windows in the sides. I've got the windows in the front and back. So this is a stock side window piece, but I've cut off the parts that hold the rear glass, or the rear glass, and I'm sorry, the parts that have the rear glass on them I've cut off because I've got AMB glass in there. Now what I wanted to show, so real quick, what'll happen is I cut that off, but the side windows will still snap into the cab, and then because I have the tab on the bottom still, that'll snap into the equipment boxes and stuff. I still need to, I've got the lights in, and that's what I wanted to show you. So the way that, before I show you the lights, I might have to move the camera a little bit. Here's how I do the lights. So I had a junk GP35, it was Southern Pacific, so who wants to build a Southern Pacific model anyway, so just cut it up. That's all they're good for. Just kidding. Just kidding. Anyway, so I did have a junk GP35. So what I have to do is I use, for the front lights, I use these tower LEDs. And I have to drill the lights out just a little bit, and I have to put a cavity in the cab, in the roof of the cab. So in the stock Kato cab, which I have right here, you'll see there's a little recess right here, and that's for the I don't have one handy real quick, but that's for the light bar to have clearance to go into the holes in the for the headlights. So what you do is first you glue on your if you need visored lights, you cut the portion off that's on the Kato model, and you put the Detail Associates on. You line them up with the holes. They don't perfectly line up, but they line up enough that they're almost perfect. Then what I have to do is I have a drill bit that is about 1/1000th larger in diameter, about 1/1000th or 2,000. Let me see, what is that? I've got a number 47 and a number 46. So I first drill it with a number 47, which is a 0785, and then if it's a tight fit, I'll go in with a number 46, which is a 0.0810. So I'll do that, and that's what I did with these lights here. And then, since I have this is my soldering jig, so then I can slip these lights into there and push them up tight. Push them up tight against the, make sure that they're clocked the same, so that one side is negative and one side is positive. And then I'll cut the tabs off this bottom one, and I'll bend them down and solder them to the top one. Now this one's a rear light for the long hood, and it uses the short, like nub type light, because the housing isn't as deep. So that, and I have this jig for that, and do the same thing. So that fits in there, and I bend the wires sideways. That way any speakers and all that will not interfere, or this will not interfere with putting any speakers, and then I can just route the wires down the side or something like that. So That's what takes care of that. And then, let me see, which side is which? Okay, well, the green is positive. That makes sense. So, if I do green to green and black to black here, these are daylight or day bright, and I'm not using that type in the model. I'm using warm white, but there's what you get for a light. And these are like, and the lens that I use, I have a whole bunch of these, is Detail Associates number 1709. So I put that over the housing. On the front, the kit 1709 gives you just a circular piece, and then they also give you a circular piece with a tube on it. I use a circular piece with a tube on it, but I cut the tube really short because the tower LEDs come really close to the front end, and I'll show you this in just a second. But that's what you get out of that. Now what I have to do, you'll notice how bright they are on the inside. This on the model will all get painted, so there'll be no light coming out the back. And I have not done that yet for these, and I still have to do that. So let me pull these out. Put that over there. Put that over there. Now let me see if I can get, let me raise this up a little bit. You see my fat belly? And let me put this underneath it. Maybe you get a better, there we go. That might work out a little bit better. And let me hook up the battery to these guys. Let me see, green is positive, so that goes to the blue wire. And black is negative, which goes to the white wire. And there's what we got. Now you can see there's a lot of light in the cab, which I'm going to be taking away. So I'll be painting the insides of those, and the light will no longer be in the cab. But you can see the warm white. I think it looks really, really nice. And those LEDs are like right up on those lenses. So that is the little bit of a sideshow that I had for everybody. I want to show you a freight car too. Something I really liked. These are pretty much out of the box. I got two of these. It's out of the box Atlas. But I really like this car. This Cumberland chemical car. Now they have the wrong trucks on them, so I replaced them with 70-ton trucks. Atlas puts 100-ton trucks on them, but they're supposed to be 70-ton. I painted the trucks black. Now Atlas has painted the frame a dark blue, and you can see I've added extra weight underneath there. But from the photos that I've seen, and to me, that dark blue really looks like it should be black. The trucks do look black in the photographs, and it's a close-up photo. It's not a distant photo. So you can see if there's a tonal change or not, but I think Atlas got that wrong. But I really like this car. I like what the trucks do to it. These are Kato 70-ton trucks, and I like the way the car looks. I gave the car a clear coat of gloss varnish. I let that dry, and then everything got a satin varnish on it. So I've got two of those cars. I like that one a lot. So that's pretty much it for the sideshow. Let me get this camera set back up over here. Maybe if I wouldn't try to break my models over here, everything would be okay. Let me go to wide angle here. Let me go up there. There we go. Let me see if that works. Yeah, that works. So I hope you got some good entertainment out of this video. I hope you liked the little sideshow thing that I did. And I look forward to moving along on this project. I don't know if they're going to be Missouri Pacific. Right now, the idea is they are going to be Missouri Pacific. The other idea I was toying around with was making them Pennsylvania, because that would fit in well with what I'm modeling for my Carroll Port Terminal in Chicago. But I really like the look of those Missouri Pacific units running together like that. So right now it's leaning heavily towards Missouri Pacific. I need to get a Missouri Pacific caboose, then I could just use those in, if I want to run them at a train show and just, run my trains with them. But I need a caboose for the end, so I do need to get a caboose. I cannot believe the prices that people are asking for these cabooses on eBay. These newer, I guess, ready-to-run cabooses that Athearn is putting out, with all the grab irons and everything molded on them, they're asking $60 for those. I mean, I'm not complaining. People can ask what they want. But when you can buy a Tangent out of the box, totally detailed to the nines, for that or less, or whatever, or close, these people are just out of their freaking minds with asking $60 for factory painted caboose that everything's molded on. That is just freaking insane. But again, they can ask what they want. If I don't want to pay it, I won't pay it, and I'm not going to pay it. I'll find something at a train show, or I've got some Missouri Pacific caboose decals. I'll just take out one of my, I've got a bay window caboose that I could use, and just, I don't care if it's 100% prototype or not, and just paint it up in Missouri Pacific to use with my my stuff here. So anyway, thank you very much for watching, and I hope you'll join me in my next video.